Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the CD guy, Johnny Z here. Thank you so much for tuning back into the channel, and today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 favorite metal vocalists of the 2000s. So far, I've done in this series my favorite vocalists of the 90s and the 80s, so I thought today, let's go into the 21st century here and count down my favorites from 2000 all the way through 2009, and of course, just like everything else on my channel, this list is all just my opinions here, so of course there are so many great metal vocalists to choose from for this list, but I only went with the top 10 here today, so obviously not everybody could make the list. So again, this is just my top 10 personal favorites, but that's not to say that I don't, not to say that I don't like a lot of the bands that I didn't include on this list, or that I'm, snubbing certain people. It's just that, only so many people could fit on the list. So with that in mind here, it's a top 10 of my personal favorites. Let's get started with my number 10. Kicking off the list now with my number 10, I'm going to go with Tarja Turunen, formerly of Nightwish. And, Nightwish were a band that were a huge shot in the arm for symphonic metal in the early 2000s, fronted at the time by Turunen, who may have had the most unorthodox voice on this list, with their mind-blowing, classically trained operatic vocals that really did bring something different to the table for metal, fronting the group from 1996 all the way through 2005 until her departure. And since then, she's been replaced by Floor Jensen, who has done a great job, I think, of filling her shoes, and is a very diverse vocalist in her own right. But I think Tarja's work on albums like Oceanborn, Wishmaster, Century Child, and Once is enough to secure her a spot here on this list. A tremendous vocalist with a very unique voice, in my opinion, that really did help to make those early Nightwish albums so fantastic, in my opinion. Coming in at number 10 here, I'm going to go with Tarja Turunen. Following that up now with my number 9, let's go with M. Shadows of Avenged Sevenfold. Possessing a nearly 4-octave vocal range, the voice of M. Shadows has been a huge part of Avenged Sevenfold's success from day one. While his voice has evolved over the years, whether it be the more harsh sound on Avenged debut record, or the more melodic approach he started to take, starting on City of Evil, or the raspier, grittier tone of his voice, there's no denying the power in the man's vocals throughout the Avenged Sevenfold catalog. So having him in my top 10 might be a bit polarizing, considering the fact that, Avenged Sevenfold have gotten a lot of mainstream attention over the years, so maybe, people feel a certain way about M. Shadows, I'm not really sure, but again, there's no denying he's got a very powerful voice, and really did help to define a lot of that Avenged Sevenfold sound, and really helped to personify 2000s metal in a lot of ways, right, with a lot of great records from, the early stages of their careers. Their sound, just like his voice, would have evolved over time as well, but in my opinion, his voice is fantastic, still is, as a matter of fact, even though I've kind of fallen off the Avenged Sevenfold bandwagon after the most recent album, and I liked it at first, not a big fan of it anymore. I kind of soured on it right away. It's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of a acquired taste. I say their new record is. I do dig the experimentation, but aside from that, I just think those songs got pretty tired pretty fast. So that's not what this list is about, though. We're not talking about the 2020s or the 2010s. We're talking about the 2000s here, from 2000 to 2009, and there's no doubt during that time period, M. Shadows was one of the best. So for that reason, he's my number 9 here on the countdown. Next to number 8, how about Trevor Strnad of the Black Dahlia murder? Former vocalist, I should say, before his tragic passing in 2022. Strnad has cited Carcass as a main influence of his vocal technique over the years, with, a totally distinct and energetic sound in his voice. He was, without a doubt, one of the most fun to listen to extreme vocalists out there, who could be an entertaining frontman and also belt out brutal, scathing vocals at the same time. So without a doubt, he was one of the most beloved death metal frontmen of all time, and the band now are continuing after his death with Brian Isbach on lead vocals, but I highly doubt the band will ever be the same again, right? Of course, like I said, he tragically passed away in 2022, but left behind a great legacy of music, and in my opinion, absolutely belongs on this list of the best vocalists of the 2000s. So with that in mind, coming in at number 8 here, I'm going to go with Trevor Strnad, formerly of the Black Dahlia murder. For the past 30 years, my number 7 on the list, Mikael Akerfeldt, has really been the lifeblood of the progressive metal legends Opeth, as the band's primary songwriter, lead guitarist, and vocalist since 1992, regarded for both his clean baritone and growled vocals. If you look at the Opeth catalog, his voice seems to get stronger with every release, as he's refined his clean vocals in the 21st century. But, to hear more of my thoughts on Opeth and Mikael Akerfeldt, definitely go check out the video I did counting down my top 10 favorite progressive metal bands of all time. Opeth were on that list, and I talk more at length about the band, so I'll leave that link in the comment section below. You definitely don't want to miss out on that video. Got a great response, but Mikael Akerfeldt definitely deserves to be on this list here. A driving force behind Opeth for 3 decades at this point, and a tremendous singer in his own right. So coming in at number 7 here, I'm going to go with Mikael Akerfeldt of Opeth. For number 6, Serj Tankian of System of a Down, influenced by, traditional Armenian music, as well as the Beatles and Faith No More, Mike Patton in particular. Serj Tankian has a wide array of influences, is, and that definitely played a part in him becoming one of those recognizable vocalists in all of 21st century metal, fronting System of a Down, right, doing timeless work on those early to mid 2000s records like Toxicity, which absolutely blew up, made them household names, right? Steal This Album, Mesmerize, and Hypnotize, which all received critical acclaim. Tankian's voice is totally original and, a driving force behind what made System of a Down so popular in the first place. They were a band who enjoyed a ton of success, in the early to mid 2000s, and it's unfortunate that they would disband, go on hiatus right around the time of the peak of their popularity, right? And so now, years later, looking back, we're probably never going to get another System of a Down record again, but at least we had those classic albums that I just mentioned from the early to mid 2000s to hold us over, in which Serj Tankian and the band do fantastic work. So with that in mind, he's my number 6 here on the list. We break into the top 5 now with my number 5. I'm going to go with Randy Blythe of Lamb of God. He joined the band in 1995. Randy's vocals alongside the band's aggressive instrumental section definitely make Lamb of God one of the tightest acts in metal today, right? And Randy Blythe's voice has definitely stood the test of time as far as I'm concerned, with his guttural and relentless vocals throughout the band's catalog, including, I think best highlighted on tracks such as Redneck and Now You've Got Something to Die For. Fantastic tracks with killer vocal performances in their catalog by Randy Blythe. Absolutely belongs in the top 5 as far as I'm concerned. So getting us started in that top 5, coming in at number 5 here, I'm going to go with Lamb of God frontman Randy Blythe. Next at number 4, Howard Jones from Killswitch Engage. Joining the band in 2002, Jones' powerful vocals are part of some of the band's best work, including The End of Heartache and As Daylight Dies, where Jones showcases incredible vocal range and melodies, right? So he was in the band for a decade, from 2002 to 2012, and so for that decade-long period, the Howard Jones era is definitely my personal favorite era of Killswitch Engage, although I do enjoy their work otherwise with Jesse Leach, who had some massive shoes to fill when he returned to the band in 2012. For me personally, I'll always prefer the Howard Jones stuff over anything else in the Killswitch Engage catalog. Just a tremendous vocalist who did some absolutely killer work with the band that, for me, definitely belongs in the top 5. So for my number 4 here, I have to go with the legendary Howard Jones. Again, just some fantastic work in the mid-2000s with Killswitch Engage that is just, generational stuff you can hang your career on, in my opinion at least. Killswitch Engage were one of the premier metal bands of the mid-2000s, and I think Howard Jones' vocals played a major factor in that. Are Linkin Park metal? I would definitely consider them to be metal, right, especially the early to mid-2000s stuff they released, when they were lumped in with the nu metal crowd, although I wouldn't necessarily call them nu metal. I think maybe alternative metal is more fitting, right? Of course, the band fronted by the late Chester Bennington made their mark with, some fantastic releases like Meteora, Hybrid Theory, and Minutes to Midnight, defined by the durable vocals of Chester Bennington. My number 3 here on the list as we get started in the top 3, who was able to convey so many emotions in his delivery while also being able to sing at an extremely high pitch while retaining the melody. So very impressive stuff there. Of course, good friends with Chris Cornell as well, and other fantastic vocalists. So that was definitely part of some of his influences, right? Chris Cornell's work with Soundgarden, as well as Stone Temple Pilots, Alice in Chains, Minor Threat, The Misfits, Metallica, and many more, all cited as influences of Chester Bennington. One of the all-time best, and really, I'd say that the rock and metal community took a massive blow in 2017 with his passing, but I think his legacy can best be defined by his tremendous work I should say his professional legacy should best be defined by his tremendous work with Linkin Park and his incredible vocal delivery and abilities as well. So with that in mind, he gets us started in the top 3. Coming in at number 3, let's go with the late, great Chester Bennington. Coming in at number 2 now, let's go with David Draiman of Disturbed, and, it's a real shame, in my opinion, that it took the band covering The Sound of Silence, originally by Simon and Garfunkel, for the mainstream to finally recognize the sheer power behind the wide vocal range of David Draiman, one of the best singers to come out of that nu metal era, who was also able to remain on top of his game with his distorted baritone, downright operatic vocals as Disturbed shifted out of nu metal and to a more traditional metal sound over the years. I couldn't imagine anybody else belting out vocals on classic Disturbed tracks like the abrasive, timeless Down with the Sickness, or Stupefy, Stricken, right, Indestructible, 10,000 Fists, and more. He's one of those vocalists who sounds the same live as he does in the studio as well, so whether it be on the band's classic early material or on some of the softer, more commercial power ballad type tracks they've been pursuing over the past 10 years, David Draiman will always give you an incredible vocal performance, always give you 110%, so that's definitely something that's admirable, especially today, now in the age of backing track and things like that. David Draiman is one of the real vocalists out there and does a fantastic job even still to this day. I think his voice has aged really well. But going back to the 2000s here, when Disturbed were, releasing great record after great record, he was definitely, a huge factor in what made those albums so special. So with that in mind, coming in at number 2 here, I'm going to go with David Draiman of Disturbed. But before I get to my number one, I do have a few honorable mentions here today. So with that in mind, honorable mentions go out to Matt Heafy of Trivium, Joe Duplantier from Gojira, Jens Kidman of Meshuggah. We have Troy Sanders, Brent Hines, and Brand Daler of Mastodon, and Devin Townsend of the Devin Townsend Project. All incredible vocalists, and to be honest, I could have done a top 20, maybe even a top 30, with all the great metal vocalists that came out of the 2000s, or did some of their best work in the 2000s, but I can only limit myself to 10 for, the sake of this list here today, or else I could possibly go on for like an hour, right? So with that in mind, I can only fit 10 on the list here today, but definitely wanted to call out a few honorable mentions that I feel definitely deserve some special recognition. And finally, coming in at number one, in my opinion, the best metal vocalist of the 2000s has to be Corey Taylor of Slipknot, possibly the most intimidating, domineering voice to come out of the rise of nu metal in the late 90s and early 2000s. Corey Taylor was just an absolute no-brainer for my number one pick here as the frontman for Slipknot. Slipknot initially opened a lot of eyes for many while touring on Ozfest in 1999, due in part to the vicious vocals of a young, angry Corey Taylor fronting the group that sent shockwaves through the metal scene, all the way to the 21st century, with the band churning out classics like Iowa, right, Volume 3, and All Hope Is Gone as well. Between Taylor's vocals being the constant powerhouse throughout, I think he definitely belongs at the number one spot here on this list. And personally, I think some of Corey Taylor's best vocal performances are, on tracks such as Snuff or the deranged classic Wait and Bleed. Two very different songs, which I think is a testament to the great range of his voice, able to convey a lot of emotions as well in his vocal, depending on the track. And I think also worth a mention is his work with Stone Sour as well, outside of Slipknot, where I think was pretty underrated, all things considered, especially compared to Slipknot, right, and the stuff they did with the band, and still does with Slipknot. But, also worth mentioning, too, is the fact that he's also pulled off some great covers over the years as well. So, just another testament to his range as a vocalist with some awesome covers like Man in the Box, Love Gun, and Rainbow in the Dark. So, great stuff by Corey Taylor. Again, has an incredible range, and in my opinion, one of the most intimidating and angry voices in all of the early to mid 2000s. So for that, he absolutely is my number one pick on the list here today. From Slipknot and Stone Sour, I have to go with Corey Taylor. Well, I'm sure this list was sure to tick a few people off, but again, remember, all just my opinions. You can see my list right over here. That wraps up this video here, counting down my top 10 favorite metal vocalists of the 2000s. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel down below, turn on the bell for notifications so you never miss a new upload, and let me know down in the comment section below what are some of your favorite metal vocalists of the 2000s. I want to hear all your opinions down in the comment section. And until next time, it's the CD guy, Johnny Z, signing off. Take care, everybody.